Well, thank you, Acting Speaker. The first political speech I can recall being captivated by was delivered by Paul Keating in Redfern in 1992. I was 14 years old. For a speech that is 33 years old, it still holds contemporary truth, a truth that is as uncomfortable as it is profound. In that speech, Keating spoke of the importance of recognition. He said, recognition that it was we who did the dispossessing. We took the traditional lands and smashed the traditional way of life. We brought the diseases and the alcohol. We committed the murders. We took the children from their mothers. We practiced discrimination and exclusion. It was our ignorance and our prejudice and our failure to imagine these things being done to us. With some noble exceptions, we failed to make the most basic human response and enter into their hearts and minds. We failed to ask, how would I feel if this were done to me? As a consequence, we failed to see what we were doing degraded all of us. And today, the Assembly co-chair, Ruben Berg, said, we do this not to divide Victoria, but to complete it. Not to take anything from anyone, but to make this place more whole for everyone. What extraordinarily generous words, given the horrors that Keating so memorably captured. The 33-year journey between those two speeches have been perhaps met with more disappointment and failure than they have with joy and success. But whether it was the national apology, establishing the inquiry that resulted in the Bringing Them Home report, or the introduction of the Closing the Gap standards, it has been Labor who has done the heavy lifting on our fraught national journey to reconciliation. And it was Labor too that had the courage to put the voice to a referendum, and Labor that now makes history by bringing the Victorian Treaty to life. For all of this, Labor will always have my admiration as agents of change when addressing the profound wrongs contained within Victoria and Australia's history with First Nations people. I was proud to support this process when I was part of the Labor government, and I'm just as proud to stand in support of it today. To the Labor government, despite our many disagreements, I want to say thank you for having the courage to see this through. And to all the amazing people sitting in this gallery who have looked beyond significant personal trauma and dispossession and prejudice to gift Victorians this treaty, I thank you. You're heroes. Acting Speaker, for decades, governments of all persuasions have committed to closing the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. Yet, despite billions of dollars spent and countless programs trialled, we have failed to achieve the outcomes that Australians, Indigenous and non-Indigenous alike, expect and deserve. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people still die around 8 years earlier than other Australians. The unemployment rate for Indigenous Australians remains more than double the national average. In Victoria, Aboriginal children are 12 times more likely to be in out-of-home care than non-Aboriginal children, 12 times. And across the country, Indigenous people make up only 3.8% of the population, yet account for over 30% of the prison population. These are not just numbers. They represent lives cut short, communities in distress, and opportunities lost. They are also a reflection of how our current systems and service delivery models have consistently failed, and that is why treaty matters. Not just as a symbolic gesture, but as a practical reform to improve outcomes. Treaty is about making services more effective, more accountable, and better tailored to the local communities they serve. It is about shifting from a top-down, one-size-fits-all model that has demonstrably not worked to one where Aboriginal communities have a real say in how services are designed and in how they are delivered. This is not about ideology. It's about empowerment, accountability, and results. For decades, taxpayers have funded programs that have not delivered. And Treaty offers us the chance to build partnerships that ensure money spent actually translates into improved health and educational and employment outcomes. And it's also about responsibility. Treaty recognises that Aboriginal Victorians should have a seat at the table when decisions are made that affect them. That is a much, much better governance model than anything else we've got going on right now. And that is how we ensure accountability, how we improve trust in the system, and drive better value for money. Now, I've heard some pretty extraordinary things said about this process by members to my right and others in the community today. If you're prepared to set the mental health impacts to one side, I encourage people to perhaps look at some of the comments in August publications like The Australian to see just how nasty some of the rhetoric can be around some of these issues. But what I would say to those in opposition is, if you don't like this approach, well, you better have a better idea, because the state election is just 13 months away. And if you don't want this plan, then show us yours in detail, because these problems are way too important to simply be deferred as a, well, if we're in government, we'll kind of get round to it maybe. Way too important. The injustice has been going way too long. The trauma, the lived experience of First Nations people in our state, it's been excruciating for so many of those communities. And you simply can't stand by any longer. Not when there's a real option on the table. This treaty, a real option built by the very people who represent those communities, that are communities in so many cases are doing it so tough. We talk about human-centred policy design in so much of the work that this government does and parliaments across the nation do. Human-centred policy design, whether it be in mental health, where we landed an entire Royal Commission and much of the emphasis was on lived experience and having people with lived experience working in mental health. We've done it in family violence, we've done it in health services. I think we now accept that the best person to design a new emergency department isn't the CEO or the chief finance officer of a health service, it's the triage nurse and the patient and the orderly. They're the people who understand what's going on at the front door. So why on earth wouldn't you have a crack at that sort of model when it comes to one of the most disadvantaged communities in Victoria? Communities that have experienced incredible hardships and prejudices and, sadly, even hatreds. I think, ultimately, Acting Speaker, history is going to look very, very, very unkindly on those who weren't even prepared to try, weren't even prepared to listen, weren't even prepared to have a go at doing something differently. Even if it was just this once, just have a go. Have some bravery and some courage and have a go at doing it a bit differently, because we know if we continue to do the same thing, we're just going to get the same results. This is too important an area, too important a cohort. The injustices and the prejudice have been so profound that we ought to be doing every single thing we can as a community, as a parliament, and I thank the government for the work that they're doing in this. We should be doing every single thing we can to put it right with First Nations communities in our state, because it is just so important. And I have to say, Acting Speaker, I'm not sure that Bob Menzies would recognise what's going on with this lot at the minute. I mean, this is the guy who put Indigenous Australians into the census. This is the guy who gave First Nations people recognition, gave them the right to vote. And I'm just not sure he would recognise this right-wing bunch of reactionaries over here, because to stand in the way of this sensible and meaningful and just progress is to ultimately look in the face of these communities and say, we know better. And that takes unbelievable arrogance. That takes, frankly, a degree of moral culpability to say that everything that's gone on with all these guys, everything that's happened in these communities, we can fix. We've got the answers. You don't know. You don't know. We know. We've got it all sorted. Well, what a load of trash. What a load of absolute trash, Acting Speaker. What a golden opportunity. Thank you to the generosity of these communities for actually saying, despite everything that has been inflicted upon us, we are going to give the gift of treaty to Victorians. We are going to be generous and magnanimous and forward-looking in the way in which we engage with this issue. Good on them and shame on them. This bill is not the end of the journey, Acting Speaker. It is the start of a more constructive, practical and outcomes-focused approach to closing the gap. For too long, we've measured effort, not outcomes. Treaty is about delivering real change where it matters: healthier children, safer communities and stronger local economies. And that's why I proudly support this bill and why I support government having the courage to try a new approach, because ultimately it is not about the politics of left or right. It is simply about respect and doing what works.